thank you so much to accept my invitation, and I was really excited to explore, and to talk about, discuss about safety and security over here in the US, in Brazil, and the
Hmm.
world. So
Yeah.
I had this whole introduction.
Well, I'll tell you. So today was a prime example of how, in my world, with my security teams, when we're preparing to deploy in different parts of the world, I actually just completed a deployment in Liberia, Africa, in September into October. It was very dangerous, 25 days. And the thing is, we will prepare and we will check and we will double check. And when we land in country, everything goes wrong. And at that point, all you can really do is fall back on your ability to remain calm, to remain happy, and know that we're somehow going to work it out. And
That
so I feel like today, I feel like the devil knows that we've got so much to share with people around the world that this little technical issue is meant to be a mini hurdle, a mini barrier, but it's not going to stop us at all.
no, no, definitely no. Let me address this. We have. I don't know if I'm live on. I cannot see myself on YouTube, but I know we are over here on Instagram. Yes, it's very important to address these topics about security, safety, and a lot of more that you have to share with us. We see on the news every day talk
Hmm.
about how unsafe it is right now in LA, on the United States, has totally changed the security safety. We have seen this during the pandemic. You see the stores being burgling all over all the way around. And
Hmm.
today we turn off on the news, on the social media, you see people going to the stores, getting everything and leaving.
Yes.
So nothing happened. So I just believe that we are sharing right now with people who we have on social media, and spread more, to be aware what you can do to protect ourselves, our family, our belongs, our surrounds. That's
Hmm.
my main point for this life.
Okay, so that's awesome. So if I have so much to share with you, I have this much to share with you in this much time. But if we need to, we'll just continue with other sessions. So I want everyone to know where I come from in terms of the immediacy or the importance I feel in sharing with people. So I was born in the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago, came to the United States as a child. I was one of the first Trinidadians to join my agency when I was with the government. I started my career in New York City as an investigator, got bored about 35, 40 years ago. The FBI was looking more so for teachers rather than lawyers. I ended up becoming a teacher and getting into graduate school. Right after I got my master's degree, I got picked up by the government and I went from teaching high school English to working for the United States government. Now, I share that only with you because I want you to know that the most important skill that I think I possess is my desire to teach. Yeah, great. I have an investigative team of former FBI agents. We're part of a bigger network of Navy SEALs. We have security operations in about 91 countries in terms of working with local armies. I have my own team in Rio, in Brazil, and they were instrumental in keeping me alive, keeping me safe for the 30 days that I deployed to Rio in 2016 for the Olympics. But getting back to that, I really just want to help people to learn that there are things they can do to protect themselves. So when we look at life here in Los Angeles, and it's not just Los Angeles, it's not just New York, Chicago, the big cities of America, what is happening is politically motivated. Now, I know that many people, when they go on to TED Talks or they engage the general public, they like to say, well, I want to steer clear of politics. I understand what they're doing, but it is cowardice on their part not to let people know that politicians are making decisions that are directly impacting our safety. For example, a gang of smash and grab thieves hit
Yes.
another mall in Los Angeles yesterday, and the surveillance video captured their license plate, and that license plate is registered to the United States government. So
What?
this smash and grab throughout the United States, especially in California, is being run by organized crime gangs, and those gangs are being supplemented by United States politicians. I'll give you an example for anyone who knows about the homeless situation here in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Homelessness, and I had a meeting with former sheriff Villanueva, and I really wish he had been reelected, but
Mhm.
I had a meeting with him before the election last year. And I suggested to him that we work together to go after homelessness from a organized crime perspective. And what that means is that there are three parties in play. There are the homeless. What they don't want to do is get rid of this cash cow of money that comes from the government. And they, in turn, when they get grants from the government, they contribute to the political campaigns of local Los Angeles politicians. And then
Mhm.
those politicians use that money to not only get reelected, they in turn provide grant assistance to those homeless advocacy groups. So that's why homelessness is growing and not decreasing. And I was pointing out to Sheriff Villanueva that if you examine that pattern from the perspective of organized crime, that would be an amazing RICO investigation. RICO, RICO. It's the acronym for Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act. The RICO statute of the federal government is typically how you go after the mafia. And one
Mhm.
of the things that you have to show with the mafia is that there's a consistent pattern of behavior. Well, we could very easily apply that pattern to the homeless situation in California.
Yes.
Because when the police officers stop a homeless person and they look at their ID,
They are not from here. They are from
they're
another.
not from here. Exactly. They are
You know
not
why?
from here.
You know why? Because during the pandemic, like before, I believe before, I start because I live on the Marina area of Santa Monica. I start to
Hmm.
see some kind of different movements, like people were not looking that like you people usually to see, like on the area. So during the pandemic, the lockdown, I was walking to Santa Monica, and then one guy came to me asking for food. He was a young guy. So I look at him and say, I'm gonna ask him, where are you from? He say, I came from outside California 2, 3 weeks ago, and they told me that I would have a job over here.
Hmm.
They I came on the bus, I didn't have to pay anything, and then I'm here. I'm homeless. I became a homeless. I don't have a job. They promised me something, but I don't have nothing. Now I cannot get out California. And then I was like, why? And he was really a young guy. So I gave him food, and I have to ask this question because there was a lot of people at that time on Santa Monica. They are sleeping there. Remember, they closed all the stores. It was like a phantom city at that time. And then, so I figured out that most of the homeless, they are not from California. They come outside, and they just throw them over here during the time. That was a specific time when they changed the everything, and they made this plan. I believe it's a plan,
It
right?
is. It is. And you really hit the nail on the head and you identified the root cause. The root cause is planning on the part of politicians and advocates. And so what happens is that when they overwhelm an area with the homeless, it draws away from other services that are designed for the citizens of this particular area. And the thing is that I tell people in my security classes, please be careful with the homeless. They are incredibly dangerous. Now, I divide the homeless into two categories.
Mhm.
Category one are those men, those women, those children, those families who are simply having financial difficulty. They didn't want to be homeless. They became homeless as a result of a loss of income, as a
Yes.
loss of job, housing, and we should always provide for them. Okay.
Mhm.
but they are the minority.
Yes.
The majority now are the professional homeless. You stop any random homeless guy right now, or homeless woman, and they are going to have three or four things on them. Number one, they're going to have a weapon, mostly a knife. Okay. Number two, they're going to have a cell phone, and someone is paying their cell phone bill. Number three, they're going to have a Medi-Cal card, and they're going to have a bus transit card.
Yeah.
And then they get a stipend, they get food stamps at the end of the month. That's what I
Mhm.
call professional homeless.
Mhm.
Now, let's talk about the politicians directly. So, Gascon is our district attorney for Los Angeles.
Yes.
He was elected in 2020. Gascon, who was a former LAPD chief, by the way, assistant chief. So he's got a law enforcement background. But that speaks to the way that even law enforcement has been infiltrated by socialists, by communists. And I'll get to that momentarily. So Gascon was formerly the district attorney for San Francisco. We all know what San Francisco is like now, and that started under Gascon. Now he's our district attorney. And one of the first things he put out, and for those of you that are on your internet right now while watching this, much of what I share with you, I would like you to confirm for yourself. I will never lie to you. I will never mislead you. But I also prefer that what I share with you, you confirm for yourself because I don't want to be in the same category as these other people who spew lies in an effort to sway you to their politics. If you noticed, I'm mentioning that this is a political situation, but I'm not
Yes.
speaking to my political party. I'm
Yes.
I'm speaking to the condition that addresses everyone in LA. So in 2020, you can Google the Gascon 2020 Special Directive, and it's on the internet. It's public knowledge.
Yes.
That directive is about 17 pages long. And it's a directive to the several hundred prosecutors working for him at that time in 2020, where he basically says, from this point on, we will not prosecute misdemeanors. That's why crime is what it is, because people know that they're not going to jail. They know they're not getting prosecuted. And oftentimes, the criminals keep abreast of legal developments more so than the average citizen. So, some of the things that Gascon is not prosecuting. He's not prosecuting gang members in possession of a gun. He's not prosecuting loitering with intent to commit prostitution. He's not prosecuting narcotics distribution. He's not prosecuting assault on a police officer.
So everybody's free pretty much. You can do.
Everyone is free. Now, for us walking around,
No,
and,
you're
and,
not.
and this is very difficult for me because I have friends who are wonderful people, but there's something in their brain and their spirit that doesn't connect. And as a Christian, I believe in the goodness of humanity. I also believe that there are evil people. You can't believe in God if you don't believe in the devil.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I have friends who are convinced that if they get attacked in the street, people will help. And I'm saying just the opposite. I'm saying to your audience, the many wonderful people who follow you all over the world, guys, if you get attacked, no one is coming to your aid.
No, they're
All
gonna
they're
be
going to do is film it.
filming you. That's what's what's the latest. The last week they're gonna be filming you. They will not
Yeah.
help you anymore. It's true.
And so
That's
what do you do? How do you protect yourself? So when I
yeah.
run, I teach 2 week law classes. I add protection in there, I add crisis management in terms of hostage negotiation.
Hmm.
The best tool that I can help you develop is your ability for critical thinking. So critical thinking is the type of thinking that typically is developed while in law school. And to be a critical thinker means you're questioning everything, not questioning everything from the perspective of a guy who criticized everything. Oh, this ice cream sucks, that person sucks. No, 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 not that. But critical in terms of asking yourself, why are they saying this, and why do they want me to do that? And people became aware of the need for critical thinking during the pandemic when the state of California said, you know what,
Shut down.
no more church for you.
Yeah.
So you just destroyed my First Amendment right to go to church.
Yes,
And
among
then they said, you know what? No more Second Amendment for you. So you
yeah,
closed down the gun stores.
yeah,
And then they said, but we're going to release prisoners from jail. So wait
yeah.
a minute. You're releasing prisoners while you're closing the gun stores? And then if you didn't wear a mask, which has never been part of medical history, healthy people don't wear masks. The
Yes,
masks were designed for doctors in operating environments.
yes,
Okay? So if you didn't wear a mask, the police arrested you.
yeah.
And it's the presence of the mask in 2020 around the world that has escalated crime to an astronomical number. Because it used to be that you would never ever think of walking into a jewelry store with a mask on,
No,
right?
I would not accept to open the door for you.
Yes,
Even
yes.
people, not even that, you could not gather it together at that time.
Hmm.
If you have three or four, five people together, the neighbors were calling another neighbor and call the police to take out, or if you open a store, police was like keep putting you in jail if you open a store. I remember to see a lot of business people say, "Oh no, I need to work. Let me work. Let me open my business." And they are looking around to who is working. So what's like here? Everything was turned around. Like if you are working, you should not work. Yeah, yeah. That's why I had a question the guy I saw on the street say, "Where are you
Hmm.
coming from? What's going on?" And he told me like, "Oh, okay, I figured out. They are
Hmm.
not from here. They come just to make this big mess in LA, basically in LA. The fifth biggest economy in the whole world, right?
Hmm.
The fifth
Hmm.
one. We are just like LA by himself. It can be a country.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's make this comes
Well,
change.
proof of its politicalization
Yeah.
was the fact that California closed, but other states didn't. Florida didn't.
Yes.
North Dakota. It really came down to the political spectrum. If you were on one side of politics, your
Yes.
state stayed open. And that means it was political. It wasn't medically based. And
Totally.
and you have followers from all around the world who have lived or currently live under governments that are very repressive.
Yeah.
For Americans of a certain age, what happened in 2020 in California was the closest thing to communism we've ever had.
Yes. True.
You actually had the governor of California advising neighbors to report other neighbors if they weren't wearing a mask.
This was like what it was like I couldn't believe it. Like I was in the third world country. That's
Hmm.
what happened in the third world country, right? Neighbors talk about neighbors,
Yeah.
not California, not United States. That was really unusual. And I was like, how people can do this, And yeah, happened. But thank you. I believe this was a lot to what you share right now. And I believe a lot of people think like that. People try
Well,
processing right
mhm.
now what happened 2020 to now, right?
Well, I'll
That,
tell you, it's important that they understand the political basis if
yeah,
they're going to be able to address the crime we have right now, because the crime we have right now is the direct result of that political crisis, because that crisis created such a distraction in our lives
it's,
that with crime going through the roof, it would force the people to seek the assistance of the government for relief. And you never want, in a free country, you should have little to no contact with the government. The government's only role is to provide for infrastructure,
mm-hmm.
traffic, agriculture, water, electricity, nothing else. And so what has happened is that simultaneously, I got a call in 2020 from a pastor who oversees one of the most prestigious rescue missions for the homeless in the world. He called me, and I share it now because he, is retired. He said, "John, we are on Skid Row, and we have long-term residents
Mm-hmm.
who sleep here in the bunks, and they're typically here for 6 months or so." He said, "I believe that my staff is involved in human trafficking." And he said, "I'm seeing a pattern of women and children getting picked up in vans at night and being dropped off at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my gosh. That
So a team member and I, we went down there under the guise, everywhere we go, we're pretty much undercover. And I went undercover under the guise of being an outreach worker. And we were going to set up an office there in the mission to begin looking at things. And what I found was this: when the pandemic hit in 2020, it hit at the same time that political forces were calling for defunding the police.
yes,
And
yes.
LAPD, unfortunately, is very politicized. I don't have much respect for LAPD. I have respect for the LAPD officers I work with
Mm-hmm.
and that I've trained with,
Mm-hmm.
and who are like 25, 30-year veterans. We've taught classes together, we work cases together. They are amazing. But
Mm-hmm.
they were the exception in a bigger agency. And so the agency gave in to the pressure of the defund movement, and they defunded their sexual abuse unit, sex crimes. So that unit in downtown LA lost 65 police officers. That means they weren't investigating rapes, they weren't investigating any kind of sexual crime against women and children. And by removing those 65 officers from downtown LA in the mission area, it created a vacuum that was filled by the cartel. And then we began to see a pattern. So for human trafficking to exist here in Los Angeles, well, first, the largest human trafficking agency in California is actually here in LA, and it's a county agency. It's
Yes,
Los
yes.
Angeles Foster Care.
Foster care. Yes.
And people don't understand the relationship between foster care and human trafficking. So typically, when you are in the foster care system and you age out at 18, you're not transitioned into further additional resources. You're on your own.
Yo
And
yo
what
home.
happens is that in the year or so before you transition out, you are recruited. In the world of trafficking, the woman, and the sad thing about human trafficking is that it requires the use of women, which is weird because women are taking advantage of other women, you know?
Yeah.
And so the women who are recruited to go and recruit other girls, they're called the bottom bitches, which sounds vulgar, but in that world it's a step up. So the bottom bitch is the girl who was trafficked herself, but has somehow found favor with the main trafficker. And so her job is to recruit other young girls. And so typically, girls in the foster care setting are recruited by other girls in that setting, which raises the question: to what extent are the foster care supervisors on the payroll of the traffickers? We know that security are on the payroll, so the low level security guards who work at the rescue missions, they work for the traffickers as well because their job is to allow for the coming and going of the trafficked people and not bring attention to it in terms of when they sign them in and when they sign them out.
Yeah.
Also, the low level guards that work at the urgent care centers
Yes. Yeah.
working for the traffickers, because what will happen is a girl might try to escape, where she might be brought into urgent care by a social worker, or sometimes she's brought in by one of the
Mm-hmm.
the thugs for the. You'll never see a trafficker in the street. Any
Mm-hmm.
guy who's in the street with the girls, he's just an enforcer. So an enforcer might bring a girl in urgent care, but if the girl comes in on her own or with a social worker, typically with security, will get on the phone and say, "Hey, listen, your girl's down here at this urgent care in Glendale." And then they go and pick them up. And then one of the reasons why, and I got this directly. I I was working with a victim assistance representative from the FBI around 2010, and she was telling me she was working a bunch of cases in Hollywood. Thai Town, that string of Thai restaurants on Hollywood Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
Those restaurants, although the food is really good, they're also fronts for human trafficking. Anything that's Thai massage, it's human trafficking related.
Yeah, I heard about that one.
And she was telling me that they will go in and bring those girls down, and they're like 17, 18, 19, and they refuse to testify because they've been so overwhelmed by fear and bitterness about what's going on. Like one girl told the FBI, well, listen, my grandfather has been raping me since I was 4. At least now I get paid for it. And so their minds are warped. And there's the new movie out, Cry of Freedom. It's on Amazon Prime.
Mhm.
True story. The thing is, although I teach about human trafficking and I work with human trafficking victims, I still can't bring myself to see the movie. And like in my personal life,
Right.
I can't even imagine it. Like, at least when I'm working, I can put a bit of a wall up emotionally.
Yeah.
And the thing about human trafficking is that there are many agencies who work to resolve it. I do, based on personal experience, my background, I just say in
Hmm.
terrorism and narcotics, narco-terrorism. My background is such that I'm going to disagree with Homeland Security on a couple of things. Number one, Homeland Security says that the typical age of entry into the world of human trafficking is about 12 or 13, which is
Hmm.
young. Okay. That's not been my experience.
Hmm.
My experience is typically a child is trafficked at about, 24, 2 years old, 3, maybe 4, first trafficked, and they're first trafficked by their family. So, for example, if you have a mom who's a heroin addict, she's going to traffic her 3-year-old.
You the
Drugs for sex.
Yeah, I don't wanna cut you this way, but I wanna just point one thing. Right now, we are having the immigrants, a lot of people coming from another countries to the border, right?
Yep. Hmm.
Kids, family. And during the 3 years ago, they are in cages, right? They are putting the kids in cages. And they are saying we have some news about who they are trafficking those kids. There's a lot of the kids disappear. So can you share something about this? Because that can be
Yes.
the case of human trafficking, like come from the board, and a lot of people disappears after that. So
Yes,
what you have?
absolutely. It's going to get a little darker, but it's good for everyone to know because the only way to combat it is to be able to recognize its signs. And we'll go into ways that we can recognize signs of human trafficking. So, from a business perspective, culturally, we all have heard of Pablo Escobar. We've
Yes,
heard of the money that Pablo Escobar had, cartel money,
yes,
right? From
yes.
a business perspective, if you compare cartel drug money with human trafficking money,
Mm-hmm.
the Pablo Escobars of the world were little bitches. They were paupers. They were poor. There's no money in narcotics.
Mm-hmm.
All the money is in human trafficking. And
It's like the old slaves, right?
yes,
Because
and
it's
the reason that is,
a
sorry?
lot of countries so rich. Is slavery what make people be rich? Is slavery free work?
It's free work, and you touched upon the formula. So the big umbrella is what is known as forced labor. We see forced labor every day. If you go into a
Mhm.
hotel, the non-Americans working in the kitchen, that's forced labor. When you
Yeah.
go into restaurants, basically it's all the back area. If you go into hotels, those working in housekeeping, that's forced labor. So what's forced about it? Well, they have to work to make money. We don't know what they're making. We don't know what wages they're being subjected to. We don't know what abuses they're being subjected to. So that's considered forced labor. Migrant
Yeah.
work, people who come to the States just to work the wineries during wine season, that's a kind of a forced labor. Beneath that is human trafficking. So the reason that human trafficking blows away
Hmm.
narcotics is, let me use a kilo of cocaine as an example. I haven't been in the streets for a while. I'm going to make up a number. Let's say, for example, that a kilo of cocaine, if you don't step on it, meaning you don't thin it out, you keep it pure. Let's say a kilo of cocaine goes for about maybe $35,000 a key. Okay?
Hmm.
Once you move that key and you get the $35,000, boom, you're done. But you can traffic an 8-year old girl multiple times a day, 7 days a week, for years.
And no one will notice.
That
No
one
one will.
that one girl is going to produce $250,000 a year, which is far more
Mm.
greater than the 1 key of cocaine. And this is the horrible thing: the bags of trash along Skid Row, when sanitation goes through there, they're routinely finding the body parts of children.
Oh my gosh.
Right now, anyone in your circle, do me a favor. Even Daniela, you can do it now, okay? On your phone, I want you to Google missing children in Washington, D.C. I want you to
Oh,
see how many children went missing last year in Washington, D.C.
every day. It's every
It's,
day. It's
it's going to
not
be about 3,000 children. Now, Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, is only 65 square miles. Okay? So,
why is meeting so many children on Washington D.C.? That's the question,
yeah.
right?
So, who lives in the tri state area of Washington, D.C.? Who lives in Maryland, Virginia? Okay, West Virginia. And who lives in D.C.? Only the world's most powerful people.
Yes.
Now, with that, when you look at human trafficking literature in terms of brochures, advocating for the finding of children and the return, the little girl is always the very pretty blonde, blue-eyed girl, which is representative of the bigger problem. But the face
Mhm.
of human trafficking in America is black children. More black children go missing each year than graduate from some schools in different states. And that's not become an issue. And we, Daniela, you and I, I'm not going to give away where we live per se, but where we are in LA, District 46,
Oh,
this is the largest corridor for human trafficking. Why? Because what are we surrounded by? East to west, we have the 10 freeway. North south, we have the 405. Northeast, we have the 101.
easy to get us access, right?
Exactly. So the women who are here in LA are from Mexico or from Vegas. Anyone
Yeah.
kidnapped here in LA will be sent to Mexico or Vegas. And what we also have a number of music venues and sports stadiums. We have truck stops. There's a formula. If I got a call from a family tomorrow saying that they had reason to believe that their child was trafficked, my
Mhm.
surveillance teams would start going out and we're looking at the venues, the sports venues, because sports venues, like for example, one of the biggest nights for human trafficking is coming up. It'll be Super Bowl night.
I didn't know. This is really surprising. I didn't know the sports events is a huge place, business for the human. I didn't know.
Yeah, because
Tell me.
the vast majority of those who are trafficking or utilizing the services of children and women for sex are men. And so, anytime you've got a sports convention center, you're going to have men. So, they will be utilizing women and children that evening, and it's terrible. Now, when I say trafficking, it includes girls working all the strip clubs. All the celebrity strip clubs have women who are trafficked. They may technically have their license saying they're 18, and they might be 18 when LAPD rolls in for an inspection. But that doesn't mean that they were 18 when they started. They started when they're 12 or 13. And so it's everywhere, and we're not recognizing it. Gone are the days where street prostitutes, like in the 70s, only wore the skimpy things and the high heels and the booty shorts, right? And some still do. The older streetwalkers do. But your typical child being trafficked looks like a high school kid because she is a high school kid. She's got her jeans and she's got her backpack and her, Hello Kitty, whatever. And one of the things that teachers, and I'm a former teacher, and I'm still a teacher, which is why I say that I cannot stand teachers. Teachers are useless. And if you want any further proof of how useless teachers are, you visit any public school in Los Angeles. The chaos in the classrooms, the
Yes.
diminished graduation rates, the inability to maintain control, right?
It is not because of the classroom is a full. It is a lot of children in this. They got also the fund from the state
Hmm.
and part. So this is that the system, right? The
It's
whole
the entire
system.
system, but part of the system are the teachers, because the teachers should be the first
Mhm.
ones. Now, when you get your teaching certification in most states, you have to take a 4 to 6 hour class on child victimization, which is designed to
Uh-huh.
help you recognize when a child is being
Hmm.
victimized. And that has other reporting requirements where you've got to report it to DCF and law enforcement if you think a child's been
Yeah.
beaten. But the teachers are so consumed with this trying to survive in the classroom that they're missing signs of human trafficking. So I'm going to tell you right now, for those of you who are teachers, these are the signs. When you've got a student consistently coming to class late,
Hmm.
possible trafficking. Why? Because they're working all night. When you've got a child coming to, and let's say eighth grader, okay, this particular eighth grader, Annabella, she cannot get to school before fifth period every single day, so she's probably working at night. Number one, she's getting more gaunt because they are oftentimes are not allowed to eat unless they meet a certain financial threshold. They got to make a certain amount of money, or they don't eat. Number two, she has no visible income, but
Hmm.
her nails are done and she's got a new cell phone. She comes to
Yeah.
school with a horrendous body odor. I'm not just talking about change of life puberty body odor. I'm talking about the smell of sex, right? Number three, she's withdrawn and depressed. So then you ask, well, if she's being trafficked and she's making money, why be in school? Well, she has to be in school because what the trafficker doesn't want is
Yes.
the school
Yes.
calling and say, "Hey, where's little Annabella?"
Yeah. Exactly.
So
Hmm.
it's a pervasive system. Now,
Kids to minimum standards at school to the cover up and have no problem
mhm,
regarding staying or not. Exactly. Yeah, makes sense. And it is I see it on the news like a lot of facilities, right, being sued by abuse or child abuse, but on foster care. But I believe it will still be a long way around until make new regulations and laws to protect those kids. And even though they come from most of the time to abused homes, right, and
yeah,
parents that's unaffected from their lives. So it is really complex
it
topic.
is. There are individuals. Listen, there are individual cops who are great. There are individual teachers who are outstanding. There are individuals who work in the court system who are outstanding. But the system as a whole is really screwed up. Now, I actually still haven't answered your question about the border, but I will. But since you
Yeah.
mentioned children and child abuse, one of the most corrupt and inept agencies in every state
Hmm.
is Department of Family and Child Services. And proof that they are corrupt and inept is that
Hmm.
every time you see a high profile case of an 8-year old who was killed by a parent or a step parent, you will find that there were multiple visits by DCF the year before. And in nearly every case of a child being killed by a parent or a step parent or a boyfriend, you will
Yeah.
find that that child was known to the system, to the school personnel, to DCF, to healthcare, to social workers, and yet this child still ended up being killed. So that the end result speaks to the incompetence of the agency and its mission. And one of the reasons why DCF are incredibly corrupt, many of those caseworkers are also making money selling babies. So if you're here in California, and I had a case, and the family law attorney and I were very worried that this very pretty white girl with a white baby was
Hmm.
going to have her baby taken away inappropriately by DCF, because it's like DCF has its own black market, and their black market consists of a need for white babies. Everyone wants to adopt a white baby. And that white baby was often taken from the family inappropriately. And then through a child court, and it's actually called children's court. And children's court is really kind of corrupt in itself. I haven't experienced it personally, but the family law attorney that I was assigned to, she had
Mhm.
experienced it, and she shared with me that children's court, there are no transcripts, and because their children involved, there is the apparent need for secrecy and confidentiality. But oftentimes, parents would normally have to undergo a bit of a probationary period. If they want to adopt a child, they'd have to go through a probationary period where they'd have to demonstrate a skill set for raising a child, which means they'd have to spend time as a foster parent. Well, for a certain amount of money that they pay to children's court, they can skip that mandated probationary period where they would have
Yeah,
to demonstrate a skill set and they can get a baby. So that's essentially buying a baby.
that's bugging a baby. Yeah,
And
exactly.
so anyone adopting children, and there's such a need to adopt children, but the adoption agencies around the world are also facilitators for trafficking. So the only way to really know that you're getting a baby who wasn't stolen from someone is that you've got to spend the money to go to that country and do your own investigation. You should never, sounds horrible, buy a baby by mail. If
Yeah,
that's the case, you're
it's
getting, a stolen baby. With respect to Mexico, the issue is that if you notice, you're not hearing much about the drugs coming over other than fentanyl, right?
hmm
It's because the traffickers are focusing, the cartels are focusing almost exclusively on trafficking. There's just more money there.
hmm
And so they intentionally allow narcotics to be interdicted because when you interdict narcotics at a certain point, it draws the law enforcement resources to that area to begin investigations like wiretaps and talking to informants or working with the prosecutors to begin prosecuting. And it draws resources away and it leaves the exterior free for the trafficking of women and children. So people have to understand the distinction between trafficking and smuggling. Human smuggling is where I'm paid to simply smuggle a person over the border. Trafficking starts out as smuggling, but when I get the person over the border, they now have to work
you
in
know
a
how to
sexual
work.
capacity.
Yes. Yeah, but I see on the news or people talking that a lot of people disappear
Hmm.
after cross the board. So that's is a kind of a human trafficking. What's the data about? What has been talking about? Because a lot of kids disappear
Yeah.
after.
So what is happening is that the current administration has done away with DNA testing. So we had a former president require DNA testing so that when what appeared to be a family arrived at the border, they would have to give a blood sample to demonstrate that these people were related. And that was
Mhm.
one way of at least trying to determine that they at least belong together. What is
Yes.
happening is that the vast majority of children are not related to the adult that they're with. And they're
No.
posing. And then you've got 25-year-old men, you've got 30-year-old men claiming that they're 18, 17, 16 years old, but they have no documents on them, and there's no medical testing being done to determine their real age. So the children who cross over the border and disappear, they've been absorbed right into trafficking. So they could probably come into San Diego County and then probably be in Las Vegas, within 24 hours. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's absolute demonic. I can't think of anything more demonic than the trafficking of a child, the mutilation of
It
a child.
it is. I believe this all this whole conversation is really good for all our listeners and now to see because we talk about so superficially and then we never stop to think about right the process and how irritating it is just to think about the system and the economy runs behind the human trafficking.
Yeah,
We see on the movies, but you cannot believe that's happened next to you, your neighbor or at school
no,
and
I'll give you two
street.
examples. So my last major trafficking case was it was right after I returned from Brazil. So it was 2017, 2018. I got
Mhm.
a call from a special forces guy at Fort Bragg So picked up a client. This a client was an attorney and her husband. They were very wealthy, lived in Connecticut. And they were on the phone with me and they said, hey, listen, our daughter is a drug addict. She was at Harvard. She got raped at Harvard. The rape investigation went nowhere because the rapist was the alum of former Harvard graduates, and Harvard did nothing. It screwed her up. She turned to drugs for relief, and now they believe that she had hooked up with a trafficking. It was a black gang,
Oh,
pretty white girl, black gang in Venice Beach, and they wanted me to
wow.
track her and get her home. So they said, okay, we're interviewing one other person. Well, the other person they interviewed for that case was the former FBI director, Mueller, Robert Mueller, who was still the FBI director, and they wanted the FBI to investigate this
Wow.
case. And so when they got back with me, they said, well, listen, you don't have the resources of the FBI. Why should we go with you? I said, well, listen, you got to decide what you want. If you want your daughter found and returned, alive or not,
Mhm.
I'll do it for you. If you want your daughter caught up in a 5-year federal investigation, then you go with the FBI. Because the FBI is simply going to turn his daughter into an informant, and they're going to keep her out there, and they're going to want to try to go after the traffickers to work their way up the food chain to the bigger
A
chain.
whole
It's completely
long time.
self-serving. It's like a kidnapping.
Later.
If
Yeah.
you had a girlfriend who went to Cancun and she calls you, said, John, they say, she says, Danny, I'm kidnapped, I'm in Cancun, and you call me, I'm on a plane within 24 hours. And I'm down there
Mhm.
negotiating with the kidnappers because you know what? They kidnapped her because they want money. And I need to
Yeah.
negotiate with them to hit
To
that
get.
right spot to bring her back home, right? If you call the FBI is going to call the State Department of Mexico City. The State
Yeah.
Department will call the federales in Mexico City, and they're going to work up, it'll take them a week of paperwork to work up an investigation because they want to start going and start arresting people. That's not my
Is
priority. I'm not interested in arresting anybody. My only interest is
yeah.
bringing the victim back home. So, long story
Exactly.
short, they gave me 3 days. They faxed me the
Hmm.
contract. I signed the contract Monday night. Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm on surveillance. I had until Friday to find her before they would give it to the FBI. We put our word out. I hit all the crack houses along Venice Beach. I hooked up with the human trafficking unit at the sheriff's department. They got called in because the attorney back east called the sheriff, and they got
Yeah.
involved. Although Pacific and Venice is not really that's LAPD's jurisdictions. That's not the sheriff's department. So one of the detectives called me. He said, "Hey, listen, we met with a girl. She's 21. We said we wanted to talk to her, and she told us to go screw ourselves. And she was allowed to do that because they didn't see her committing a crime. They didn't want to
Yeah.
get involved. Now, I'm not saying that law enforcement did anything wrong. I'm disappointed, though, that the sheriff's department simply accepted that. Okay, she doesn't want to talk to us. There's nothing more we can do, right? And they wiped their
Nice.
hands of it. So I said, well, listen, I'm going to stick with it. And they said, well, John, they're going to kill her because they're already advertising her on social media. And typically, what'll happen is that she's going to use herself up, and then they'll just kill her.
Oh, it's too sad. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's too sad. It's like yeah, but, because of when you come from another country, like my situation, and you to fight to survive,
Hmm.
fight to work, and fight to be there, and we have, and I believe it is that I was thinking about this. It's a whole context about you, who you are related to, who are your friends, and just happening right here beyond our eyes is just like sometimes I cannot believe, because I would believe in my country, right, in third world countries, developing countries, but over here, United States, it's still sometimes hard to believe it,
Yeah.
but it is true that
It's
happened.
everywhere. You know why? Because evil is universal. It's just
Yeah.
that in first world countries like the United States, I mean, I think we're still
Mhm.
first world,
Yeah.
at least, part of us. In first world countries, those crimes are just better masked because we've got
Yeah.
so much going on that it's not as apparent. Like when I was in Rio, I mean, it was apparent, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. But the way that it
Yeah.
gets masked in LA is that human trafficking operates in the shadow of crime and poverty. And so,
Yes.
in the shadow of crime and poverty, law enforcement is so busy chasing the guys with the guns and the drugs that they're running right past the girls on the corner and not
Exactly.
recognizing that they are the ones being trafficked. So, for those of your family and friends and followers who have children, regardless of where you are in the world, but we're going to localize ourselves here in California. Let me give you a few tips to
Hmm.
try to prevent your child from being trafficked. Well, number one, many teenagers, many girls especially, stumble into being trafficked because they made the first move. And they made the first move by uploading sexy photos of themselves on their social media.
Hmm.
Okay. So by making the first move, they basically did not realize that these predators are on social media 24/7 with fake profiles and then start
Exactly.
talking to you. And psychologically, pedophiles are, and you have to know the difference from a security perspective between a pedophile and a hebephile. Okay,
The difference,
the
can you
difference.
tell us?
Okay, a pedophile is
Hmm.
that person who's attracted to children already showing secondary sexual characteristics, meaning they're already in puberty. So if we
Yeah.
were a security unit assigned to surveil a suspected pedophile, and let's say, for example, we lost him in traffic during surveillance, our team members would know to hit all the junior highs because he's likely going to be there, or he'll likely be at a mall where he's going to
Mhm.
be in the presence of those kids in the secondary sexual characteristic development. A
I
hebephile
see.
is someone who's the opposite. He's exclusively attracted to a child who has not shown any sexual growth yet. So
I
then,
see.
if you lose that person on surveillance, then you got to hit the playgrounds in the elementary
Mm.
schools, okay, in the daycares. And so so I won't go into great detail, but I'll tell you how the government works. So I worked for a government agency with three
Yeah.
letters in the name. We'll leave it at that.
Hmm.
And I'm on surveillance in LA, and we come off the surveillance. We didn't find our target, and we're just kind of BSing, right? Having Krispy Kreme donuts, and they were telling us, "Oh, hear about so and so?" And I didn't know who the so and so was because I had come from New York and I was assigned to LA. Well,
Hmm.
the unit had someone, a pedophile, who was a special agent. And what he would do is that when he was sitting on surveillance in the bad neighborhoods, he would take a little strip of paper, like 1 inch by 1 inch, and he would write his name and his freaking government cell phone number on that paper, rubber banded to a rock. And when pretty young girls walked by, he tossed it at the girls, right? Hoping to get a phone call. On this particular day, he tossed it at a young girl, but the rock was retrieved by her mother. She called that number, and she gave it to law enforcement. They tracked it to his government phone, and he didn't lose his job. He got transferred.
Oh my gosh. It's like it's almost the same as we talk about all the priests, right? The
Yeah,
Catholic priests,
yeah,
that they don't get any kind of they don't get the judgment on the right on the court, the common court. They go to their own court and they move them around and nothing happen
yeah.
anymore.
It's the
And
interagency investigation. You can't have an agency investigating itself. I did work side by side with a pedophile. So many years ago, and I'm going to tell you the name of the school. I was an English teacher at John Adams High School in New York City, right?
uh,
So I was new to the unit, to the English department, and one day I came in and I'd seen an English teacher and kind of an older guy, middle aged guy,
mhm.
nondescript looking. Well, I heard a lot of buzz about him. All of a sudden, he was gone. Turns
Mhm.
out that he, 5 years earlier, had been dating a 14-year-old, a freshman student. And he was
Mhm.
taking her from New York City to Las Vegas. I'm not Las Vegas, New Jersey, the casino in Jersey, and just, whining and dining her. They had a full blown relationship. Now, 4 years later, this young lady is a freshman at a New York college. And one night, over drinks, she shares with her roommates that when she was a 14-year-old freshman in high school, she was having sex with her English teacher. Well, that roommate became alarmed and told her mom. The
Mhm.
mom made an issue of it and tracked it back to the teacher
I
at
thought
John
like
Adams High
you.
School. He was charged with 45 counts of molestation and kidnapping. The kidnapping part came from transporting the young lady from New York to Jersey for the casino. In the end, the New York City Board of Education settled with the family. He not only kept his job, they transferred him to a middle school.
Middle
A
school.
middle school.
Okay.
Ostensibly because
What,
he's not going to date a middle schooler. So
what
this is
a
my
solution.
word of advice to every parent. You
Mhm.
have to know who your child's teachers are. Because
Yes.
the pandemic was such that they were hiring substitute teachers for online classes. Remember when everyone was on Zoom, which was
Yeah.
disastrous for students? They were hiring teachers who had criminal backgrounds for inappropriate behavior with children. But because they
Oh,
were online classes, they thought there would be no issue.
problem.
And then when online classes went back to on campus classes, those teachers kept their jobs. So we have child molesters teaching children right now. So you must know who is teaching your
That,
child. Number two, limit their access to their own cell phone. They should
yeah.
not be on social media at that age. Number three, the spelling is Giobit. It's pronounced geobit. I use that for some of my family law cases. A geobit tracker is a little tracker that you can attach to the child's clothing or as a piece
Mhm.
of jewelry. And it allows you to track where they are all the time. Don't put it in their
That's
backpack because kids lose their backpacks.
yes.
This is
Yeah.
attached to a belt loop or it's attached to their body. Now, I think the initial cost is like $50, $60. I think it's like $12 a month. I don't work for GeoBit. I'm not recommending them. I'm just saying I'm not sponsored by them. I'm just saying I use that in my cases. There are other similar tracking devices where not only can you track the child, you can actually speak to that child's tracker.
I see it.
Okay,
Okay.
and you can hear conversations. So if you turn
So
the
what the
tracker
name?
on
What
from
the
your
name
cell
of the
phone,
trucker?
I'm sorry.
What the name of the
It's
trucker?
called GeoBit. GIOBIT.
Good to know. Thank
And
you.
the other
That way.
child tracker has the word angel in it. If you just Google child tracker angel, that's the one that allows you to hear
Uh-huh.
conversations going on in the classroom from that particular,
That's
you know.
great. Okay, that's a great one. John, I don't want to I just want to get some information from you about your background. You're talking this wonderful life. I believe all listeners are enjoying a lot and getting a lot of information. And if they have a question, they haven't. I think they are listens so much that they have no even questions about because I believe you are filling them up with so much information.
No, sure.
So I know that you are before a special agent United States Justice International
Mm-hmm.
Department,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have international travel security firm
Mm-hmm.
that have this consulting security company that you have been in 2014 World Cup in Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
security consulting 2016 World Olympics in Brazil. You are now an instructor of criminal law investigation,
Mm-hmm.
and also you are a advisor for domestic violence and human trafficking. So tell me about your security consulting company. What do you do? What you provide to your? to your
Well,
clients?
it's essentially the company is me. I'm the brand. I meet with the clients, and depending on what they need, I reach out to team members under me, whether they be former FBI, former Navy
Uh-huh.
SEALs, a whole host of things. So I would say that it's broken in different categories. Anything
Hmm.
from kidnapping to criminal investigation, because we've got a team of private investigators. I personally have to handle the travel security, so I'm considered a travel expert, and I'll talk to you about that in a moment. And then I've just been signed to host a pilot TV show called Forgotten Prisoners. And
I
Forg-
heard that. How about what's going on with TV show? Gonna be great.
yeah, so right now they're looking at A&E, and they're looking at a few other national channels, maybe BET. And so the show, we are not defending anybody per se, but we're looking at people who've been incarcerated for a number of years. And we're looking at it from the perspective about whether or not their incarceration was a result of a lawful
Yeah.
investigation, or was this a shoddy investigation that led to the wrongful incarceration of someone who is innocent. And so what I do as the host, I'm also one of the producers, and I do a lot of the script writing. I Every case that's submitted to us, it doesn't come to me personally. It comes to the show's producers. By the way, the producer will be meeting with me tomorrow because we were supposed to film in San Antonio, Texas, but it may be here in LA. Should be
Hmm.
easier for me. So when they get a case submission, I need certain things. So I need everything from the criminal investigation, what they call discovery. So I want to see the police reports. I want to see the
Or
police notes. I want to see the transcript testimony. And normally, just in looking at the police notes and report, I can tell if there are problems. I can tell that there are problems because I teach police report writing, and I'm so saddened to say someone who's former law enforcement who works with law enforcement, it saddens me to say that unfortunately the state of law enforcement in America right now is sad, and many of those officers are poorly trained. They have no morals, and they engage in illegal behavior right now. As a matter of fact, I am right now studying a 700-page document that is focused on why officers get arrested. Officers get arrested for sexual crimes. They get arrested for alcohol problems. They get arrested for fights, meaning battery, and then
yeah.
they get arrested for falsifying their police reports. And the fifth
Okay.
reason that they get arrested is they get involved with profit motivated crime, meaning they're taking or
Mhm.
stealing money. Now, those things become impactful with my show because once I can demonstrate that there's been a problem with the report, I'll bring in my team and we will go out and re interview the witnesses. We
Wow.
will speak to the prosecutors because the problem is that it's not just law enforcement. The prosecutors, in many cases, are openly lying about what happened, or they're withholding information. It's known as exculpatory evidence.
Because usually
Exculpatory
prosecutors
evidence.
want the career over that on that over the case,
What's
right? The
that?
prosecutor, they want to make the career very markable over the case.
Yes.
So if
Hmm.
they use the case to make the step up on the career
Yes,
most of the time, right?
they do. And anyone who's ever been before a judge will tell you that more often than not, the judges are really bad people. They treat you with such disrespect. And so, one of the things that we hope to do is that, in addition to highlighting these individual cases, I'll end every episode with what we call case text, which is my just giving advice to the audience about how to
Hmm.
secure their individual liberty, how to secure their constitutional rights. So, I live here in LA, so I can really just speak to California law enforcement with
Yes.
expertise, right? But what I suggest to people is that they need to learn more about how, and we will teach them this, how they can interact with law enforcement in a way where law enforcement is going to respect who they are and not
Hmm.
consider subjecting them to behavior that is based on falsified testimony or outright lies. So, law enforcement basically, unless they see you commit a crime or you're the
Hmm.
subject of a warrant, On a day to
Yeah.
day basis, law enforcement has no reason to come into contact with you. None. You're supposed to be able to come and go and never have to deal with law enforcement. Now,
Mm.
law enforcement teaches officers how to approach people and get
Mm.
people to make admissions about things that result in their own arrest. And many
Yeah.
people talk themselves into handcuffs. So the act of approaching you to get you to talk about your life, that's known as
Yeah.
consent. CONSENT, consent. That's an actual chapter in the police curriculum. I actually teach these classes from the police curriculum
Yeah.
because I want individual citizens to understand more about the training of officers. So the idea of consent is that when an officer talks to you, if you're walking down the street, let's say I'm with the sheriff's department, and I say, "Miss, how are you today?" And you say, "I'm good, officer, how are you?" Although in your mind you've only acknowledged his greeting, you've just given him consent. And based
Mm.
on that very minimal contact, he can keep going as far as he can until you stop him. The problem is people don't know how to stop that.
We don't know.
So
Yeah, we are not aware. We don't know the regulations. We don't know the laws.
no, you
That's
don't.
not
But I can
choice.
break it down for you right now. In the next 2 minutes, I can teach you what to do. So when you're
Teach
dealing
us.
when you're dealing with an officer, it's important for them to know that you have something in your background. You have some body of knowledge. So this is the world that officers exist in here in California. Every officer is a graduate of the California Academy. That
Mm.
academy is called POST. It's the
Yeah.
acronym POST. That stands for
Hmm.
Peace Officers Standards and Training. Okay.
Okay.
So when you say California Post, you're talking about the academy. Now, their entire curriculum is based on case law. So, case
Hmm.
law are those Supreme Court cases and those appellate court cases wherein the
Yes.
decisions dictate how an officer does his job.
Yeah. Pre-existing decision, pre-existing laws. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Okay.
it's not a common law. It's not a common. It's a common
It's
law, but
case
it's
law.
not a
Okay.
prescribed law.
So now
Yes.
you've got two things. You've got California Post and you've got
Hmm.
case law. Now, case law is predicated on teaching officers how to do their jobs without violating your rights. Now, the
Yes.
last thing, which might be the most important thing, you know, every big job you have has an employee's manual, right?
Hmm.
Every
Exactly.
police officer works for an agency that has a policy manual, okay? LAPD, Sheriff's Department, every agency has its own policy manual. And the policy manual is
Hmm.
supposed to be a direct reflection of
Exactly.
everything they learned at the academy. Okay? So
Mm.
you have three things. You've got California Post, you've got case law, and you have the policy manual. Now, the policy
Yes.
manual starts with a statement from the chief of police where he
Hmm.
says that my officers will always respect your constitutional rights and treat you with dignity and respect. And that's called the chief's preface, or it's called the mission statement. So
Hmm.
let's go back to you walking down the street. Miss,
Yes.
how are you? May I talk to you for a second? Right? Your response would be, Officer, I first want to thank you for your service to the County of Los Angeles. But
Yeah.
in keeping with California Post, case law, and your policy manual, I do not give you consent to contact me. So I want to wish you a wonderful day. And you keep walking. That's how you avoid the contact.
I
And they
see
can
it.
do nothing. You know why? You've mentioned everything that constitutes the basis of their existence.
The fourth, fifth, sixth amendments.
Mhm. Yeah. So again,
Just
California Post, case law,
yeah.
and their policy manual. When you have someone rude to you, let's say you are interacting with an officer, right? And he's rude to you, you can say, Officer, it appears to me that you're in violation of your mission statement. Because the mission
Yes.
statement says that you're going to be polite to me, right? You're going to stop them right there. Now, trained and untrained people use the terms incorrectly. So, for example, everyone says, well, I'm going to file a complaint with internal affairs. Okay, that's stuff you hear in the movies.
Yeah.
There is an internal affairs division, but
Uh-huh.
they're really called professional standards. And instead
Mm,
of using the term complaint, which you would use in any other context in life, the real phraseology is adverse personnel action.
adverse personal
Yeah, so
action.
anything that's adverse is
Okay.
going to work against you. So when you say, officer, I don't appreciate your rudeness to me because you're not only violating your mission statement, I am entitled to file an adverse personnel action with professional standards. They will wet their pants. Why? Because they're using language only they know, which
The
means they're going to
proper way.
wonder, are you married to a commander? Are you actually a
Yeah,
cop yourself?
exactly. Exactly. I have a question for you regarding this approach sometimes you have from officer. Like one time, a long time ago, I remember I was driving my car, I have my mom and my son on the car,
Hmm.
and then an officer told me to pull to the side, and I have been done nothing. And he say, "Oh," and just he walk out his car, he come and check my car, and I was, and for me, on my point of view, I was being profiled,
Okay.
right? They just like look at me, I'm driving this car, they are profiling me, they are checking my ID. Is that right? Is that right thing to do? And he
What was the purpose of the stop?
have no idea. He never told me why he was stopping me. He just looked at me, he stopped me.
And then
Was
what did it
nothing. I
result
didn't
in?
run right, nothing. Oh,
What did it result in?
so looked at my ID. He saw that I have my mom and my son and the car, and that time I have a BMW. So I thought that he was profiling me. It's nothing to do at that time. My son was just like 5 years old, I believe, at that time. And then I look at him like, why you stop me? And I was at like a marina area. And I said, why you stop me? I have no idea, you know? And at that time, also, I didn't know how to approach, what to say. Right? I was really integrating about the situation.
Hmm. And then he let you go?
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah,
my
that was a bad stop. That was an illegal stop. Any stop in California. See, when people say, "Well, I know my rights," I encourage people not to say that because you may have an understanding of certain things, but you don't know your rights. So if you don't know the penal code, which is the laws of criminality in California, if you don't know the
yeah,
vehicle code, which is the basis of all vehicle stops, and that's really the vehicle code is the officer's best friend, and I'll explain that in a moment. If you don't know the health and safety code, if you don't know the education code, you really are outgunned. And so when you say to an officer, "Officer, I know my rights," they're chuckling on the inside because they know that you don't. Now,
oh,
in the state of California, once you get behind the vehicle, you're subjected to the vehicle code. And the vehicle
mhm.
code is the officer's best friend because people don't know the vehicle code. For example, people don't know that if you make a right hand turn more than 7 inches from the curb, that's a violation. And so, right now, as of January, what the officer should have done, if that were a legitimate stop, he should have identified himself by name, his agency, and he should have told you the reason for the stop. Now they're required to do that. If they stop you, they must tell you. What they had been doing is asking, "Do you know why I stopped you?" And they were tricking people into confessing to an infraction that they didn't commit.
Exactly.
The person might say, "Oh, because I was speeding." Now, maybe the guy really wasn't speeding.
Now he asked it if the car was my car.
Hmm.
That was like he's profiling me. Like,
Yeah, that is profiling. He probably thought you were moving narcotics because in LA, you do move narcotics with other family members in the car. You do. So. He was definitely profiling you, and that was an illegal stop. You could have filed an adverse personnel action. Right now,
That,
as of January 2024, when they initiate
uh,
a traffic stop, they must identify themselves and they must tell you the reason for the stop.
their stop. That
Yeah.
it's good to know because usually, like we are okay, immigrants, right? We don't know much about the rights, right? Even though if you are legal, I'm legal. We are legal in the United States.
Hmm.
So sometimes they take some kind of abuse of power, right? To know you're not from here and you don't know much about the laws, regulations, and you can get lost on translation. It's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
normal.
One of the reasons why it's very difficult to work with the immigrant population in the States is that many immigrants come from home countries where the law enforcement community were the problem. And
Yes.
so, although we've got a real broken system of law enforcement in America, it is still the best in the world. I mean, we still abide by the rule of law. We still have academies and professional training. It's just unfortunate we've got individuals who are not up to the job. Don't ever
Yes.
think that a cop is qualified because he graduated from the academy. All that means is that he met minimum standards. That's all. And similarly, do you know how many attorneys I just had to get in? I'm going to be clean here. I had to get in the butt of two LA County prosecutors on a case I was working because they didn't know the penal code. And they're prosecuting people, right? I just corrected a judge, a federal district
Interest,
judge, because she didn't know the penal
interesting.
code. So never make an assumption about qualification because a person has a title or position.
I see it. I
You
see
know,
it. Okay. Yeah, it is tricky. And it's good to have this live with you because you are mystifying a lot of questions that I believe I have and a lot of my followers have in this Instagram and YouTube. And I believe that it's great because we are not always aware how to protect ourselves or to identify a
hmm
crime.
yes, yeah.
Can you tell us more of like how can you protect our belongings, our lives, even then home and not going to work, commute at the markets? I seeing a lot of posts about people get problems outside the market,
hmm
like at the parking lot. A lot of human trafficking happening on parking lots, on markets, on the
Yes,
shopping center. How? What's Tell us more, a little
sure.
more about
So
that.
the best. So I personally, I carry a full array of personal protection tools. I've got my firearm. I also carry my pepper spray, and I
Yeah,
carry my taser. And the reason that I carry all three is that we're in a day and age where, and you've seen it here in Los Angeles County, you could lawfully defend yourself with your firearm. Someone breaks into your home, right? And you
yeah,
defend yourself and you end up in handcuffs. Okay?
yes,
So the reason that I carry all three, now I also have the advantage of being able to articulate myself in a way that is a little different than the way the average citizen would. But I
yes.
also don't want to put myself in that position. And if I carried my firearm alone in the absence of my taser or pepper spray,
I
I'm limiting myself to one option, and that's the most deadly of options. Right now, the other
yeah,
options are, well, option one is to always be self aware of your environment. Make personal decisions that won't put you in harm's way. For example, there's a little neighborhood bar that I go to. I like it because I know the bartenders, I know the security, who are very nice people but poorly trained. I will never put my life in their hands. I
uh-huh,
go, I arrive at 7:15, I leave at 9. Why? Because historically the fights there begin at 10. I leave as the crowds are coming in. So I cannot be in harm's way if I'm not there. And I'm the sort of person, because I go out well dressed. And because I like to keep to myself, I'm friendly, but I'm not familiar. When I go to a bar, I want to be left alone. I want to read my email. I want to have my drink, have my one
yeah,
conversation with the bartender. I'm not interested in dealing with people. And in this day and age, with people being so broken, although you politely ask them to consider that you're just not interested, they're going to take that the wrong way.
Yeah, it's
right?
true.
So
It's
I
true.
don't. That's
Yeah.
why I don't go to clubs. I advise clubs, and because I advise clubs, and I know the degenerates who are working as the bar managers and security, I won't go there. So to answer your question, I sometimes feel safer with my pepper spray than my sidearm. Why? Because in the state of California, this 2.5 ounces. Now, pepper spray, this is nothing more than cayenne pepper. Now, having said that, I was teaching a class of veterans, and I said, guys, although it's cayenne pepper, never spray this on your food. And they start cracking up because that's exactly what they did in the military. They sprayed their food with this and they got sick because although it's cayenne pepper, it's still mixed with chemicals so it can disperse. Okay?
So we should all get
Go to Big
pepper
Five
spray.
Sports, yes. Go to Big Five
Okay.
Sports, buy this for $15 and keep it with you everywhere.
You see, guys, pepper spray. Buy it.
Okay?
Buy it.
Now,
Okay.
this has a safety cap. You see that? So that you
Yes, I
can't
can.
press it by accident. What
Yeah, hold on, hold
happens
on,
is that,
hold on, John.
what's that?
Hold on, just a second. Guys, we had a problem at the live today on Instagram. So I moved the live to YouTube. Just go to my live on YouTube. Be live with Dani Ke'lly. Right now, we talk a very, very important topic about pepper spray to protect yourself against any crime in LA. Just check it out right now. Go on YouTube. Let's go. Go ahead. Sorry, I had to. People, everybody is asking, "What is your guest? What is John? What is John?" So I have to tell them that you're YouTube because we could not access the live on Instagram. I'm so sorry. It's just I see you on YouTube right now, just right now. Go ahead. So go go ahead, John.
So
Let's see.
you get your pepper spray. What happens is that people panic and they cannot spray it because they
So go ahead.
forget that they've got to go beneath the little safety cap, and it takes no effort. Number two, they hold it the wrong way, meaning
How you
this is
hold
not
the
this is not perfume. You don't ever use your forefinger, okay? Because
oh
when you use
you
the
have
forefinger, you're going to create tension in your forearm, and you're going to spray too low. You want to grip it full fist using
okay.
your thumb to disperse it,
Okay.
okay?
Use like
That also
this.
gives you the flexibility of being able to punch and fight and not have someone hit it out of your hand.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
this will do you no good in your purse or in your pocket or in your hip. Meaning, when you're walking to your car at Trader Joe's, when you're walking back to your vehicle from concert, some concert at Wi-Fi, whatever, have this in your hand. When I leave the bar and I'm walking home, okay, I
Uh-huh.
got my cigar in one hand and I have this in the other because I want to react in the moment. So the penal code standard to use this, because it's non-lethal, meaning it cannot kill you, is
Okay.
that the moment you feel any degree of fear, you can use it in defense of yourself. And
I
it
see.
is subjective, not objective, meaning only you have to feel the fear. It doesn't have to be a
Mm,
situation where others have to decide if you should have felt fear in that time. So, for example, if you are pushing your cart to your car at Trader Joe's and two
yeah,
guys approach you and they say, "Hey, can you give us $1?" Right? And they make you feel weird, light them up.
I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I have to tell you one case. This week, this past week, I went to a CVS, the pharmacy, and I was just on the phone. Like if I am never distracted. I'm always aware of my surrounds. But at this time, I was really like tired, walking. So this guy came to me, say, "Oh, can I ask you a question?" At the right moment, I just told him no.
Yeah.
I was so scared because we never know what he's gonna ask you. And then I was, oh my god, maybe he needs something from me, maybe he needs help. And later on, I was like, concerned about what the question he was asking me, but then I was kind of sense of protection to like, no, don't ask him any questions. And then I didn't know if he had a weapon or no
Hmm.
weapon. I was really concerned because I lately I have been very protective myself, and we don't know, we never know what's going on, right? And he told me, can I ask a question? No, no,
Yeah.
don't. And I was, later on I was like, oh my gosh, maybe he needs something, I didn't help you, but my first sense was to protect myself.
No, and you did the right thing. You know why? You either were going to help him or he was going to kill you. Okay,
Yes,
you did the right thing because you know what? In this day and age, he doesn't have to choose a single woman by herself to ask a damn question.
exactly, that's what was on my
Yeah,
mind, why he wants to ask me a
yeah.
question.
There's nothing. There's no knowledge that you possess that's going to change his life. He could have asked
Yeah.
anybody else. You did the right thing, and I want to speak to
Okay.
the mindset. So this is going to sound crude, but it makes the point. When I teach classes, I teach when I talk about the unfortunate crime of rape and rape prevention.
Yes.
This is something to remember. The good girls get raped. The bitches don't. What does that mean to you when I say that?
Oh, the good girls, the ones who always want to help people, right? They believe, they trust
Yeah.
people, and they don't, they don't care. They just walk away. They don't listen. It's true. It is true. It
Yeah,
is true.
and there's a book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. I'm not a big Gavin DeBecker fan. I'm not a fan of that agency. Um,
Uh-huh.
I won't go into that, but Gavin DeBecker wrote a book called The Gift of Fear, and the book is predicated on the fact that we have our spidey senses, we have our intuition that we
Yeah.
ignore. And he did research for the book where there was the interview of victims, women who had been sexually traumatized,
Yes.
and they thankfully they lived to talk about it, and they all said the same thing. They all said, you know what, something was weird. So something was weird, and yet you still allowed yourself in the presence of this guy. So at a nightclub, a good girl is not going to be able to say no to the guy who wants to buy her a drink or wants to get in contact with her, right? Whereas the bitches will say, you know what, fuck you, and and
It's true.
and they don't let themselves be available to it. The good girls will let a guy walk her to the car or
Yeah.
hold her hand. The bitches won't put up with it. And
No.
so
It's
I can tell you that I used to go to the Saddle Ranch on Sunset Boulevard, and the one at Universal before it closed.
oh, I,
And
huh?
then I did some consulting for a terrible club in West Hollywood. It's called the Abbey.
Abby.
And if you want to get date raped, you go to the Abbey and you will get date raped. Why? Because the bartenders are in on it. The the predators go in and they tip out the bartenders in advance.
On the Abbey on Robertson and Santa
Yes,
Monica Boulevard.
yeah, yeah. It's
Wow.
known for its narcotics and date rape. The bartenders get paid by these predators in advance to pre-coat because girls will think, and guys too, girls will think, well, look, if I go to the bar and I see my drink being made that you're buying for me, I'll be fine. What they don't know is that the bartenders have pre-coated some of the glasses with GHB and Rohypnol. These are the colorless, odorless powdered drugs. They're actually tranquilizers for horses. They've pre-coded those classes so that when they get the signal from the predator, they make the drink in this glass and not that one. And then oftentimes predators will travel with a group of girls, and it's the girl's job to slip the drug into the prey's drink because girls trust other girls.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
one of the most challenging things is getting women to stop trusting other women. Because what do women like to do at a club? They like to go to the bathroom together, right?
With a girl. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
normally it's normally in the bathroom area that the girls are overwhelmed and they're dragged out. Case in point, a very famous case. You can Google it. A young lady, a 15-year-old girl, was attending a Dallas Mavericks game 2 years ago with her
Okay.
dad. 15 years old, went to the restroom in an arena with 15,000 people and got trafficked. And when they found her 12 days later, They found her in Kansas City. And so she was accosted by women in the restroom and somehow removed from an entire sports complex, inclusive of video surveillance and security, and ended up trafficked in Kansas City. And the first group to really screw up this investigation were the police. And this leads me to my point. I'm an advocate for victims, meaning if a victim comes to me and the budget is there, I'm with them from soup to nuts. So I'm the
Mhm.
one speaking to law enforcement. I'm the one dealing with the prosecutors. I'm the one escorting them to court. Why? Because I tell victims that typically, beyond the initial horrible victimization, you're going to be victimized three more times. Your next victimization will come in the form of an inept police department who will just simply
The-
make you feel like garbage.
yeah, they do.
And they're not going to work with you to really press the issue.
They do. They do.
And
Yes.
then you'll be victimized by the prosecutor's office that has just simply relegated you to an anonymous
That's
number.
terrible.
And they
That's
don't
terrible.
keep you abreast of the case development.
No.
So in the state of California, every victim is protected by the California Victims Bill of Rights. That's Article 1 of the California Constitution. And so
Mhm.
oftentimes when I get in the ass of an officer or a prosecutor, I've got to remind them that they're violating my client's rights by not keeping her abreast of developments. But the point I want to make is that the police department there in Texas weren't going to pursue this case of kidnapping, so to speak, because it was their contention that this 15-year-old ran away. They
Yes.
said she ran away. Right?
Yeah. So they don't do nothing
They
because she
They
just
did
went around.
nothing. Do you know how she was found? The parents somehow got in contact with a private agency, not an agency like mine, but a private agency that specializes in trafficking. And they got the parents to give them a photo of their child, and then they started running these Google comparison programs on the computer and found the young lady being advertised in the back of a sex magazine in Kansas. And so that's how they were able to track her down. If it hadn't been for this private agency, God knows where this young lady would be. And when they arrested her, when they arrested or rescued her, they arrested 15 people, seven of whom were women.
Wow, seven women. So you cannot even trust a woman because usually trust like now friends, right? Someone who you just met is so approachable, so friendly, tell you how beautiful you are,
Yeah,
and they give you all this great advice how to succeed, what you should do, what kind of boyfriend should have, and most of the time those advices are not a proper one
yeah,
to
it's
help you.
not.
That's what.
Women are vulnerable when they're, we live in an age of single moms are amazing. My mom raised me, and single moms are amazing, but there is a problem with single moms not having enough self-esteem, and they go on to
Yeah.
dating websites, and the predators specifically seek out single moms. And what'll happen is they'll start whining and dining this mom. And so when the mom finds out that this predator had sex with the 14-year-old daughter, in many cases they just ignore it
Yeah.
because their desperation for a man supersedes whatever maternal feelings they would have for their own daughter. And it's a horrible cycle. But I wanted to share with you, I know that many of your friends and family and followers travel. And I wanted to spend, in the time we have left, I wanted to spend some time talking about why, or teaching them why, one of the most dangerous places in the world is a five-star hotel, and how to avoid getting kidnapped. So, the reason,
Go ahead,
let,
because we see a lot on the news, five-star hotels, kids being
yeah,
kidnapped. People just kids, little kids, right? Have the Madeleine.
hmm
The Madeleine case in Portugal was like this, a five-star hotel, five-star resort. She never appeared. She never. Nobody knows. So tell us about
sure.
this.
Well, I'm going to start from the beginning. Let's start from the beginning of a trip. Let's say, you're taking well, let's say you're returning home to Brazil. Okay. So
Mm,
you leave from LAX, and typically you got to go to Dallas Fort Worth, right? And then from Dallas Fort Worth into Rio.
Miami.
Okay.
Yeah,
The kidnapping begins as you're descending into Rio. Why? Because in other countries, kidnapping is a team sport. So it involves the military, it involves the police, it involves customs. And so when you're descending into the home country, what do you do in those last 20 minutes? You're filling out your declaration, which
yeah.
includes
Address,
the name
address
and
information.
address of the hotel where you're staying.
Yeah,
So it's very important that you memorize the name of another five-star resort so that when you give that paperwork to the customs officer, if he decides to call his buddies in military and law enforcement and say, hey, Danny Barreau is staying at this hotel. When they show up there, you're not there. And it's not
mm,
illegal to give them another residency because
address.
it's not
Uh-huh.
uncommon to get to a resort and it's overbooked. So right off the bat, you're responsible for sending them on a goose chase. You give them another name of another resort. Number two, to the extent that you can, never book the room in your name. Always book it on a corporate card under a pseudonym. Now, when you get there, unfortunately, you do have to give you a passport. But if you're traveling
Yes,
with a group of people traveling for business, have the business sponsoring you book all the rooms under their corporate name with an additional key card for you so no one ever has to know your name.
yeah,
Now, when you get to the hotel, the reason it's dangerous is because every single employee of that hotel has access to your room. Every single employee. So it's important that you book under a pseudonym, that you say
mm-hmm.
no room service, right? No housekeeping, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then the concierge, who typically give advice to tourists, they are
Yeah,
oftentimes working for the cartel. So when you go to the concierge and ask for advice regarding a theater or a steakhouse,
don't do it any.
they're telling you where to go because that's where you'll be picked up. So I will intentionally go to the concierge for the purposes of leading them to believe that I want to know where a steakhouse is, so I won't be there. Now, what I also sometimes do, depending on the budget, we'll book our rooms. Like in Brazil, we booked our rooms at a hotel, Copacabana Beach, and we were
Yeah.
there long enough to be seen on the video surveillance. And then we left and we went to a safe house. So we never
Mm,
stayed at the hotel. And if people wanted to know if we were there from the video surveillance, they would think we were there because, oh, wait a minute, he was here in the lobby. So
I
we
see
keep them
it.
there. Sometimes what I'll do is I will, and as a guest, you'll really never want to use the guest elevators to be on video. I can't go into detail here, but there are
Mm-hmm.
ways to get from your room to downstairs. It doesn't include the the guest elevator. Never book a room near the stairs or the elevator because criminals of opportunity tend to hit those rooms because of the easy escape.
Easier.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I travel, if there were a fire, it's not the fire that kills you, it's the smoke inhalation. So I would travel
Okay.
with a smoke mask. You can actually get these on Amazon.
Smoke mask.
Okay. Now,
Let's.
this is nothing more, but I don't know if you can see it. This is nothing
Mhm.
more. Do you see that dark part there? Okay.
Yes,
This is nothing more than a plastic bag.
I
What you would
see it.
do, you pull this plastic bag over your head and you tie it off. You don't suffocate because that black thing you saw over the nose, that's 7 layers of charcoal. And the charcoal will filter the smoke,
I see
giving you
it.
up to 15 minutes of breathable air. So this is standard for any personnel on an airplane. Also, hotels are mini worlds. And people go to a hotel to do a drug deal. They go to a hotel to kidnap someone. They go to a hotel to commit suicide. They go to a hotel for any number of reasons. And especially if you're a high profile person, we don't know who has planted listening or recording devices in the hotel. So
It's true.
I travel with my little mini radio frequency detector. And what this allows me to do is to let me power it on for you. This
Amazing.
allows me to scan my room, and it will pick up any device emitting a frequency.
Video camera
Video
or
camera,
audio.
anything. This little eye part here allows me to look through, and the
I
illuminating lights will shine on the lens of the camera. Okay.
Interesting. Guys,
Now,
you have
you
to
can
see
get
this.
this. You can go on to Amazon.com and you can get this for about $40. It's plastic, so it'll go through TSA no problem. It comes with a little charger. You want to keep it charged. And the way you use this is that you run it around an area in the room that's likely to have any kind of recording device or video device. So you run it past your TV, past the computer, along the air conditioning vent, and then always check the electrical outlets.
This is like I always say, this is the most important advice you give me right now because I'm always concerned. Even my home, I'm concerned on my own.
Yes.
Or I go, I think I have a camera watching me.
Yeah, so I've been hired to do electronic sweeps. So I come in with three or four FBI agents. We log on to the home's Wi-Fi, and we'll sweep the entire home. It takes
Interesting.
about 4 or 5 hours. It costs a couple $1,000s, but it gets done in a day. I typically carry this in the car with me. Every now and then I'll
Uh-huh.
run it past my own car, depending on where I am. Try never, listen, there's some people in life who are just evil.
Yeah,
Okay, drug dealers, pedophiles, high school teachers, and valet. Okay, and bar managers at nightclubs.
I have.
The valet are evil because they're organized crime. And what
Wow.
typically happens is that they work hand in hand with the professional car thieves. So when you have your
Mhm.
car valeted, they're going through your car and they're getting your home address because people leave their car registration in the visor
Yeah.
and they leave other personal things in the glove box. And so sometimes what they'll do is they'll plant an AirPod on the vehicle, and then the people will simply follow you home. Or if they don't
Yeah.
plant an AirPod on the vehicle, they'll just follow you home. So it's very important that if you're driving a high end car, and the thing is, the carjackers and the home invasion guys, they're rolling around in luxury vehicles. They're not rolling around in a
Mhm.
hoopty. So
No.
if you got a Mercedes behind you, you got a Phantom, you got a Range Rover, you got to
To
make
be
sure
aware.
that they're not
Yeah.
following you onto your street.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So regarding all this safety, how to protect, to be aware, one thing I always do, I never post on social media things that I'm doing right now.
Yes.
Like if
Yeah.
I am in the market,
Mhm.
if I am in the shopping center, if I'm traveling. If I'm traveling, I will post 2 weeks later.
Yes.
I don't do any posting like momentary on that place because that's I think the most dangerous things you're doing to yourself, to your
I
safety. Is that
absolutely agree, and I do the same thing with one exception. Sometimes when I'm overseas, for example, in September and October of 2023, I was in Liberia. I was hired to confirm the validity of gold, which took me to some
right?
very, very dangerous places. And each
Yeah,
day, I would upload a video for the purposes of anti-kidnapping and retrieval, so that my team back here
they know
could go to the
where you
cloud
are.
and they would know exactly where I was. So under those circumstances, I would post, but I wouldn't, post as you said under those. I don't even let people know when I'm out. Sometimes if I'm having a great meal, I might put it on Instagram. My Instagram is private.
Yeah,
I might put it there, but I tend not to put exactly where I am at any given time.
location or how what time you're getting home,
Yeah,
leaving home, what you're doing. I always post one day later on,
yes,
and
you have
just
to.
for and people I know people tracks you like or if they don't do but then you tell someone to do that most of what happen most of the time, right? And that I agree with you. If you're in an unsafe zone, that is a good
It's
idea
bad.
to.
Well, I'll tell you. So what we would do, let's say, for example, you and your son were heading back to Rio for whatever reason. Let's say I was heading to security for you. What I would do is I'm a member of FBI InfraGard and the Department of State OSAC. OSAC is the acronym OSAC. That stands for Overseas Security Advisory Committee. You can only be an OSAC member by working overseas. So I've operated in 35 countries. And so what I do with clients is that when we go to a country, I file an operational plan with the embassy in that country. So the resident security officers who work for DSS, diplomatic security, they work with FBI and the CIA. They know I'm coming to town, and I take their recommendations regarding hotels because they recommend hotels where other diplomats stay. And in very poor countries, for example, in Liberia, I stayed in a hotel that was recommended by the embassy because other diplomats were there, and there was just a ton of security. So it was better for me. Next, by filing an operational plan with the embassy, I get access to daily crime reports. And then they'll sometimes allow me to know in advance of planned protest. So if I know there's a planned protest, for example, we had a ton of stuff go off during the Olympics. We'll avoid that area. But the most important thing is that they will recommend specific doctors. And in the event of a crisis or disaster that would normally shut down society and shut down commercial air, we can fall back to the US Embassy, and then I'll just bring in a private jet to get us. So we're not going to ever be stuck anywhere. So,
Yeah.
not many people know how to travel that way. Not many people can, even if they have the money. Why? Because even if you have the money, it doesn't mean that you have someone like myself who's a member of OSAC. So,
Mm,
no celebrities have real security. They got big 7 foot black guys, and they start. And for me, and I wish I was a 7 foot black guy, but I'm not. I'm 5'8" with a little pot belly, but I have a 7 foot mentality. And when
uh,
I travel, especially with celebrities, my threat matrix considers the celebrity of other stars because the celebrities and their security are the ones starting the fights in the bottle service area. They're the thugs. And so I make sure that my security takes into account the security of other people because here in California, celebrities use bodyguards who are unlicensed to carry a weapon, and they're untrained, and they create liability. So that's a whole different
it
class right there. It used to be that 25, 30 years ago when you left professional sports, whether it be boxing, football, wrestling, whatever, your next transition was to become a bodyguard. Hence the
yes.
stereotype of the big burly guy. And then when celebrities started realizing how much liability these guys are bringing to them for starting fights and carrying
Yeah.
illegal weapons, there was the move away from that to more of the Secret Service example. And I've been
In the,
blessed. I've been assigned to President Obama's team. I've been with countless diplomats. I've been blessed to cover all of the protection categories from presidential to diplomatic to C-suite,
the
corporate, and then private sector. So what I've done is I've just taken a little bit of everything and I've personalized it for my work with my clients. And so I like to think of myself, we are the Secret Service of the private sector, and that is predicated more so on brain work than brawn. So
yeah.
much work goes into the advance because the advance is your only real opportunity to control factors. So what goes into the advance? Well, the advance would be, sending a team to Rio a week before you arrive. And it's their job to connect with the police there.
Work with
It's
everything.
their job to
Yeah.
set up the vehicles, the armored vehicles. It's their job
Yes.
to set up the hotels and or the safe house. It's their job because,
Yes.
for example, in Rio during the 2016 Olympics, whew, it was rough. Now, the world kind of owes Brazil a huge apology because Brazil, and I
Why?
love Brazil, because the world kept advertising how dangerous Brazil was.
Oh yes. No, it's still doing, but it's not that.
Yeah. And
Not that.
they advertised it or they overemphasized it so much that the Olympics didn't have the population it expected. People
Yeah,
who
but they do.
purchased tickets still just didn't go. And
They do this all the time. Like especially Rio.
mhm,
Like when it's approaching November, December, the negative publicity about Rio
Hmm.
and Brazil is tremendous outside
Yeah,
Brazil.
it's bigoted.
People
It really is. So what
yeah.
happened is we land in Rio, and half the world didn't show up. And by half
Hmm.
the world not showing up, the Brazilian Olympic Committee, in addition to the International Olympic Committee, they had to recoup some of the money. So what were they
Yeah.
doing? They were selling tickets on the ground day of, which created a dynamic for potential terrorism. Because at least if you sell tickets to people in advance via credit card, there's an opportunity to engage in some sort of background investigation of them.
Yes, you
And
know
then when they
that.
come into Rio, all the facial recognition is there.
Yeah.
Like people get caught, international thieves get
Backgrounds.
caught going to a sports event because of the facial recognition. You know?
Yes.
Well, by not doing that and selling tickets on the ground, every hoodlum was now gaining access to
Yeah.
Maracanã Stadium, and the beaches were overrun by the Arastos. I mean, I know you probably know what they are, but for the Americans, the Arastos are like these child gangs, like they're like eight,
Yeah. How you
nine,
call?
10 years old.
How we say pivetes. You say pivetes.
Okay,
Pivetes. Pivetes.
and
Pivetes.
and they roam like 40, 50 deep. And so they would hit the beachgoers on, Copacabana Beach, like a swarm of bees.
We call arrastão. É arrastão. Arrastão. They took everything, like you say, cleaning the whole beach.
Yeah.
Arrastão.
And
Yes.
then if you went into a restaurant, you think you'd be safe in a restaurant that is two levels with, maybe 50, 60 tables, right? Well, you're not safe if you've got 40 guys running in who are armed.
Yeah.
They take everybody. So part of the advance is creating the opportunity to take a client like yourself to a restaurant where we have the ability to escape. So the only way to escape is to have security agents in the street a block away, whose job
Mm-hmm.
it is to see this gang approaching,
I mean,
and then
yeah.
they radio into the team on the interior, and then we got to
Yeah.
grab you and get you to the vehicle through the kitchen outside, and
Yes.
gone as the gang is approaching. We got to do the same thing with hotels. So it takes
Yeah.
quite a bit of
Yeah.
choreography. And
Yeah.
in the military and law enforcement community, we always say, you never leave a man behind. But in the private sector, in my circle, I have to tell everybody, guys, I can only take team members who can't be left
Yes.
behind. And
Yes.
we have to know that you can make your way to the rally point, or you make your
Yes.
way to the next country. you know. So it's definitely a challenge, but we try to bring to the private sector as much as we can. In terms of educating the public. Some things like what I've shared with you, I can share with you, but many things I can't share with you in this form. I can share with
Yes.
you in a private capacity. But one of the things we hope to do with the show Forgotten Prisoners is that the
Mhm.
plan is to have me travel the cities of America and run in community centers like 3 to 5 hour law classes where, for 3 to 5 hours, I'm just
Yeah,
teaching the
that's interesting.
community how to secure their constitutional rights.
Yeah, but just right now for this couple hours, you are sharing like the time already run like 6:30 already, and for this couple hours, you gave a lot of tips, a lot of information that I'm sure that people were not aware what to do, how to identify, how to protect themselves, and then I believe any kind of approach that people like you can help others is it is a lot is a value is a lot
Thank
of
you.
how is can I tell right now it's just a lot of value for me like yeah, right now I'm taking all these your advices information that I didn't know I wasn't aware like example I was stopped by a cop right and I didn't know that was wrong or right
Hmm.
and how to approach to people to say no and stop them right away because I don't know what they have them their mind. But John, I'm so thankful and grateful for having you. Take
Oh,
your time, your busy schedule on Sunday,
oh, it's
and then
my honor. It's my honor. It's okay. I took a little nap. Sundays are long days for me in an awful way. So I attended church here in LA. We have a
yeah,
nine. a 9 a.m., 11 a.m., and a 6 p.m. Well, I'm part of the security team for the 9 a.m. and the 11 a.m. And I love being there. I protect the pastors and I protect the congregants, and I feel like God is using me at least to contribute in some small way. So I love it. It's just when I get home I usually take a quick nap because I'm wiped out. So I had a good nap, and I hope that we've been able to share some things that are impactful for your friends and your family and your followers. I apologize for my contribution to the technical
No,
errors earlier. I am a New Yorker, so I tend to speak quickly. So I hope, and I speak with my hands like an Italian. So I hope
no,
I
I
wasn't too
do.
much of a distraction. But
Definitely, definitely. All the insights you had shared with us, all your experience, and all this information that we're not is not reachable to us, right? Even my followers, they all like looking. What is the live? What is the live? I want to know more. I want to learn more. It is so worth it, you know.
thank you, thank you. Anytime, if ever your followers suggest that there's any one particular area of safety or security that they want to know a little
Yeah,
more about, we could do that. If they ever want to do like a 30-minute class, we'll just do it like a class, whatever. I love what I do. I love sharing information with people. It enriches my life. I know that I touch upon many dark topics, and when I instruct people, I need to get them to think on a certain dark level for their safety. But really, I want them to do that because I want them to be liberated, because knowledge is power.
yeah,
And you find yourself liberated emotionally when you truly understand the dangers out there. So you go from seeing life in black and white to now seeing it in vivid color, HD.
yes,
And that's for the benefit of yourself and your family, because in the end it's only you. You
yeah.
won't be able to rely on law enforcement. You're not going to have a good Samaritan come by.
They won't be there on the right time that to protect you. You have to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you, John. I
Thank
have
you.
it was amazing. I'm like, wow, the time just passed by so fast, and it was such a, enrichment, information, enrich yourself, and yeah, I'm so thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't have, I'm speechless right now.
That's okay. You go decompress. I'm gonna head out to Ralph's. I'm planning on
Yeah.
making shrimp fried rice
Okay.
tonight. I'd love to cook. So
So thank you
okay,
so much. Have a
okay. We'll
good
talk to
night.
everyone soon.
Thank you,
Okay,
guys. Bye
okay. Bye
bye.
bye.
And guys, thank you so much for being here on this live tonight with John, and getting all these information sites. And if you like, please subscribe to my page. Say what you think about this. If you have any questions for John, let me know. Let him
Mm.
know. Follow him on Instagram. Is there? I left his information over there. And thank you so much. Have a good night. Bye, John. Bye,
Okay,
bye.
bye bye. Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.